Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again. You can call me Matt, and today I'm joined by my two trusty sidekicks, the Strategy Wargamer, you can probably call them Jean if you pronounce it right, and TortugaPower, also known as Eric. How are you guys doing today?
Not bad, not bad, not bad.
Thank you for asking, Matt. I'm doing very well.
Alright, so let's start this thing off. So I wanted to ask, what have you guys been playing?
I have been playing, this is Tortuga.
Is it Tortuga or is it Eric?
Oh, god damn it. We're back to this.
It's Dr. Tortuga.
I've been playing Rule of Waves 2. That's pretty much all I ever play.
Ooh.
But aside from that, I have some really negative things to say about my IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad purchase. That...
Oh, shit.
I don't know. I just I had an issue with the license key not being recognized because basically I synced it to their forum. And yeah, I'm taking the time. I'm up on my personal podium, my soapbox here, and I'm throwing them under the bus. They like strongly recommend that you link your account to their like forum or whatever, your Steam account. And I didn't have any issues until I did that, but they also hold you hostage because you can't change your in-game player name unless you link it to their forum. So, yeah, anyways, what am I like, seriously, what am I playing? World Waves 2. I've been playing a lot of They Are Billions. I don't know, have you guys heard of that one?
Oh, yeah. That's a great
it's
game.
one of those games that I bought on a sale a while ago and haven't touched.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The campaign, it's like kind of this mindless fun, which brings me back so much nostalgia, wonderful nostalgia, to like not World of Warcraft. Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, StarCraft, like the campaigns. I really love it. So
You just listed like 5 games I've never played in my life.
you haven't played any of the Warcraft series?
Nope.
Have you heard of the company called Blizzard?
Yes, I've heard of that.
I mean,
I'm aware of the games. I just have never played them.
He's probably heard of a Blizzard.
Yeah, exactly. You mean that the fancy drink that they have at Dairy Queen?
Yeah, I've had those.
Yeah, so Blizzard, that was my first game I ever played in my life. The reason why I'm here talking about video games is because I played the original Warcraft by Blizzard so many years ago, and then I got hooked. So,
we've never talked to you about your origination in strategy gaming.
Well, I guess I just gave it away.
Oh my goodness. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, the IL-2 that you said, did you buy it on Steam? Because that's on my wish list for the Steam summer sale.
Yeah, the Battle of Stalingrad? Yeah. I did, and actually, Matt did as well. So we were planning to do some co-op, and he didn't have the same issue, to be fair, but I've had a couple of bad experiences with that company, 1C GS, 1C Gaming Studios. I think that there's just some disconnect between Russian developers and the like Western consumers.
The one question I have though is because 1C is the publisher, but it's also the developer. But then another developer, which is like 777.
Yes, 777
or something.
Exactly.
And they did Rise of Flight, which is another really well-regarded flight sim game. Except that looks at World War I instead of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had any issues with it. I actually picked up IL-2 also on Steam sale. I wonder if some of the issues you had have to do with peeling back the onion a little bit. Some of the issues you had when you tried to get a press key from them. Because I know they had given you a key, but it like timed out or something like that.
That's
like
right.
A demo key or something, and that's probably tied to your account that now you're tying your purchase to, so it's probably confusing their system.
Yeah, I think this is true.
They gave me, and I'm not trying to brag, but they gave me a key that didn't expire, and I haven't had any issues. I went back and I don't know if it expired or not. I don't think it did, but I must have uninstalled it, and I just figured, whatever, I'll just buy the game and through Steam. It'll be more convenient. So I ended up buying it through Steam, and I haven't had any issues with it.
Wait, this is not only an airplane game. There's tanks.
Yeah,
they're working on a tank version, I think.
Look, I think that a lot of the stuff they're doing is pretty cool, and there's a reason why I bought the game, even though it's actually, I mean, as with most flight simulators, they're not particularly cheap games. A lot of the games I buy are probably like more or less the maximum price I would go to is flight simulator prices, and it's because there's really not a market for. I mean, there's not a whole lot of developers doing those kind of games. If you think of like World War II flight simulators, what can you name?
I would argue, I mean, World War II specifically, this is really it, I think. There's some World War II planes that DCS has some models for, but not like a full-blown world, really. I think DCS had a Kickstarter or Indiegogo or something at one point where they were going to do like a whole European theater campaign, and that got funded, and then the company that was working on it went under, and it just went away. Because I remember being a backer for that, and then I think they ended up incorporating a couple of the aircraft into like the DCS world. But yeah, you're right. There are really no other serious World War II flight sim games out there. And DCS is really the only other serious modern flight sim platform out there. Either they focus more on modern aircraft. I would also argue that IL-2 is a little bit more approachable. DCS is very much, a rivet counting flight sim. Like, I want to learn how to actually fly the aircraft and everything I need to know to fly the aircraft. Whereas IL-2 it has some elements of like, all right, you need to know some information about manifold pressure and other things like that as you're flying or whatever, but it's much more approachable to just be able to pick up and play.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know, basically I'm using this public forum to throw them under the bus, mainly because I created my ticket 3 days ago and they still haven't, like, I can't play the game until they get back to me, and so I'll probably hear from them soon.
That's really unfortunate, though, because like I was playing around with it just a little bit, and I was flying. I got the collectors because it's all on sale.
Don't tease me.
% off.
Just pretend you can't play.
I got a collector's edition Spitfire Mark V, which was one of the Lend-Lease aircraft that the Soviets flew during some of these battles that are included in the game, and it's pretty awesome. It's pretty fun to fly around in, and I am not by any means a good flight sim person. I want more detail, but I also want to be able to not spend 45 minutes learning how to fly. So, being able to just kind of jump into the cockpit and fly around and hear that the sexy purr of the Spitfire and hear the roar of its guns, it was pretty evocative, and the graphics and everything, they're up to date. It's pretty well done from an outsider looking in, spending 30 minutes in the game anyway.
The visuals look gorgeous. I'm seeing one of these screenshots on Steam, and it's just the sun hitting the cockpit off the windows. It's beautiful. You got even little imperfections in the windows too. You can see.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Flight sims are kind of like car sims in that, like, they are some of the best. If you're trying to show off graphics of like a game, you'll always see that like new gaming consoles or whatever they're about to come out with, they'll always show images from like a racing game, or if it's available, like a flight sim game. Those are just interesting in that they always seem to be the type of games that really show really well from a visual perspective, and I think that's because your scope and your vision is so limited to just like, you could really focus in on the cockpit, or you can really focus in on the sun or whatever, but it's not quite the same thing as having like 100 different like units out there on a map that you have to worry about. I don't know. It always seems like you see those types of simulation games that are always front and center of the early screenshots for new graphics cards or new gaming consoles.
Yeah, it's a beautiful game. I hope as soon as my thing is fixed that Matthew and I can do some co-op with it. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Are you guys going to fire at each other?
Yeah, co-op because...
Who's going to play the Germans?
Well, I mean, Tortuga here Eric here was talking about buying a VR headset.
Oh, that's right. That's actually what I wanted to say, is that this game, I would say it's almost mandatory that you have to have like track IR, or actually because track IR is very expensive, 150 or something. So I was looking into alternatives, and there's two really good alternatives out there, Track Hat and DeLon, which you can get basically the same thing, almost the identical thing, just not the name brand, for half the price or even a third of the price. For DeLon, I think it was only £40, which is 50 US. So, but it's pretty necessary. It's very cumbersome to try to use your joystick hat to toggle vision. I don't know what you're using, Matt, but that's what I'm using for vision, and it's pretty terrible.
Joystick hat, and it's pretty damn terrible.
Yeah. So I would suggest that, and I'm also looking into VR right now because I just experienced that for the first time. My nephew has a full setup, and it's amazing. So I'm actually considering getting that sometime in the future.
Are you going to buy a new graphics card when you get it?
No, if mine can't handle it. Actually, I'm probably going to go with the Oculus Rift S because it has slightly lower requirements and it has a lower frame rate. So they say that you might your eyes might get tired looking at it after more than an hour. I have such little time. If I'm ever able to play VR for an hour, it'll already be a miracle, so who cares?
I, for one, cannot wait for Rule the Waves 2 VR.
That's right. Hey, by the way, I didn't mean to take this conversation hostage with the IL-2 talk. So maybe, Matthew, do you want to keep talking about other stuff you're playing?
I mean, I've been playing a little bit of IL-2. Tried to help you out the other night, but ended up just circling around into Spitfire by myself. And other than that, Steel Division 2, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit. And what else have I been playing? That's about it. I mean, I want to get back into my Rule the Waves series, but I've been a little bit busy with some things going on here. War in the Pacific, my series with XTRG, which is continuing. I've still been a little bit behind on that, so I haven't really been playing a lot of other games. Just trying to jump into my Steam catalog here and see if I actually, if there's anything else worth talking about. I don't think there is.
Well, one question I have for you guys, maybe you can help me out. So I have a whole list of games I want to get for Steam, and I don't want to spend too much. I'm probably going to narrow it down to two. But so I have a list of games. I wanted you guys give me the thumbs up or thumbs down. So War of Rights, Project Zomboid, War Game Red Dragon. That's a recommendation from you, Eric. So I'm going to want to talk about that in a second. And
the worst
Banished.
of the war games.
No.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting.
Goddamn.
So why do you feel that?
Modern warships going broadside to broadside with missiles is just... I can't get over the horrible naval element of that game.
Well, the naval element is just not
It's a
part of the
fucking
game,
joke.
man.
Imagine a modern frigate using Nelsonian tactics with missiles streaking up from the side instead of cannon fire. It's absurd.
Are you talking about War Game Red Dragon?
Yes.
Look, the naval aspect is there for people to be oohed and awed by a little bit of fun graphics on the. But if you're honestly the main, probably 90% of the battles are fought just on land. I mean, the only time you ever do a naval one is just if one person wants to experience some of the naval stuff. And it's pretty cool. The air to ship and ship to air, that kind of stuff is pretty. I think that's all pretty well modeled. I haven't really thought about the ship to ship. Yeah, it's probably a little bit wonky.
Oh wait, Eugen Systems does this too?
Yeah, that's right. So
Steel Division is World War II war game, basically.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, interesting. So it's the same. So basically, it's the same engine. So if I'm enjoying Steel Division 2, I'm going to probably enjoy this.
Well, it's very, very similar. There are some differences. I would say the UI is significantly worse in Wargame Red Dragon. You have less information. For example, the really nice vision hotkey, or when you hold down C, you can see the vision range and everything. That is completely absent in Wargames, so you're always trying to guess whether you're visible, what's the terrain blocking. I mean, it's kind of a pain. So going from Steel Division to Wargame, that might be a little bit challenging to deal with. And there's probably some other examples of that too.
Besides the naval aspect, is everything else good?
Yeah, I think it's nice because there's very few modern warfare games, and it fills that niche very nicely.
And it's $7.49, so this is like a crazy sale.
Yeah, I would expect that considering it's a pretty old game, even though it's the latest of the Wargame series.
It's like 2 cups of coffee.
That's right.
Yeah. One other thing, I think you've played some of the Scourge of War games, right, Jean?
I have, yes.
Have you played Waterloo?
I have. I did like it. I'm just more preferential for Gettysburg because I don't know why. I really love the Gettysburg and the American Civil War probably because I'm more preferential for that conflict.
I mean, I worked on Waterloo and I prefer the Civil War era myself, so it's fine. But what I was bringing up was that, I don't know if you saw on wargamer.com or not, but someone released a mod for Scourge of War Waterloo that adds a brand new battle for free. It's called La Soufal. It was the final battle, I believe, in the Napoleonic 100 Days campaign. It involves a French corps of about 20,000 men fighting off a Austrian corps of about 40,000 men. And I believe was the final battle in the 100 Days. It was actually a French victory. it was released as a free mod that some folks put together, and I don't think there haven't been a ton of mods of like new battles in the Scourge of War Waterloo game, but this is one that's like a brand new battle, brand new map, all that stuff, and it's all free.
Interesting. I have to go back to Scourge of War. I haven't heard anything from those guys, because weren't they supposed to redo a whole? I remember we had like some discussion like a year or two ago where they were going to go into a whole new title series. I think American Revolution or something like that, or go back to the Civil War. I remember something like that.
Not that I was aware of.
Oh, I thought I heard some rumors that they were going to do that.
I mean, I can't speak to rumors, but I can tell you that this is a free mod that you can download if you have the game already, so you can check it out. There's actually a pretty lengthy article on wargamer.com about it.
So both of you guys played War of Rights, right?
I've played a little bit of War of Rights.
I haven't played it.
Okay. How did you feel about it? Because it's $15. I think it's 50% off, and I'm kind of leaning toward the buy button.
I mean, $15 is only, what, like 3 cups of coffee?
Yeah, exactly. It's just 4 cups of coffee.
We should just call this the cup of coffee episode.
Just buy everything, because it's just a couple or 4 or 5 or 10 cups of coffee.
You know, really, it's just...
War in the Pacific Admirals Edition, $90. That's just 15 cups of coffee.
It depends where you're buying your coffee, right? Are we talking like Starbucks, or are we talking Dunkin' Donuts, or Tim Hortons, or whatever? What type of...
Plus or minus, 5 cups of coffee.
Listen, it's only 10 cups of Starbucks coffee, all right? Honestly, I played a little bit of War Rights. It's okay for what it is. I don't think you're really going to get the experience out of it that you want unless you find like a group of players to play with, like a clan or something like that. It's kind of fun. You do see players tend to play, at least the time I spent with it when it was relatively new, players were using authentic tactics. They were using line or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's hard for me to get too excited about an FPS Civil War game. Yeah, okay, you've got realistic reloading, but do I really want to wait 10, 15 seconds every time I reload for a shot? And yeah, okay, some people are lining up in a line, but you're still limited to like 75 people. So, I mean, your battles are still relatively small. Maybe it's 150 and 75 on each side. I'm not sure. But even so, I remember playing around. And it's like, all right, it's like a couple of companies marching across some really well put together Antietam battlefield maps that, I mean, it looks gorgeous. It is an interesting idea. I just don't know if you're ever going to have the critical mass of players to make it really feel like you're reenacting a battle.
I had to even look up what this game was, because I had heard of it. I've actually seen... Matt, didn't you put this video?
I did a video of it or something like that. I mean,
I saw that.
Like,
okay.
It's interesting, but it's not... I don't know if it's the kind of game that I'm going to spend any more time with. I'd rather play something like Scourge of War, Gettysburg, or something like that, where I can actually get the sense of a large battle. I'm just not really interested in essentially playing reenactor online.
Yeah.
And, it's fine. There's definitely a lot of people who are, but that's not for me.
I was just going to say that for people who, like me, don't even know what this is, War of Rights is a first-person shooter in the Civil War, and it's simulation-like, so as you said, the reload times are, pretty long.
I remember when I first played it, it was cool, right? Like, I was like, oh, this is like loading a real musket. This is fun. And then 10 minutes later, it's like, yay, okay, this is okay, And, I mean, it is interesting. I played around, and there were some people who were dicking around, and the officers in our unit shot them, and that was kind of fun. And it was, the game definitely has rules that are in place to try and encourage people to play authentically. Like, you get penalties if you don't fight in linear combat. You get morale hits if you don't fight in a certain way. So it does its best, I think, for this type of a game to feel authentic. It's just, for me to really be interested, I'll be honest, and this just sounds stupid because you'd never really experience the real what a battle would look like, but I would want like 2,000 people playing at a map to like actually see what it would look like, not 75 and 75.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I know, I realize that it's not a game that you're ever going to see, but I'm just saying, like, for me to really be super interested, that's what I have to be. And it's a game that makes for some amazing screenshots. You know, if you get 75 guys lined up, all like presenting their weapons and firing a volley, it looks cool as fuck. But it's just not what I'm looking for.
I know that's one of their goals that they said they keep. They're planning to do like first companies and then battalions and then brigades and then eventually divisions and then eventually, I think I read somewhere where they said they plan to actually bring in entire corps and armies together.
Sure, but how are they ever going to do that? Like, let's be real. It's not just a limitation of hardware. It's also a limitation of how are you going to find, if you're talking a corps, how are you going to find 20,000 people to actually be interested in playing that battle, that type of battle? I have to imagine this will play pretty interestingly within like the reenactor community, because there's a lot of folks out there who will fit into like this would be interesting for them to be able to do some of these things. But also a big part of the reenactment community is the camaraderie of like being around other people as you're doing these types of activities, and that bond that you form with other soldiers within your reenacting units. You're not going to get that digitally. Maybe you do that when you're not able to go to a battle or whatever. Maybe there's some element of that. But
I don't know about that. I mean, okay. I don't know. You're right. Actually, I don't know anything about reenactment. I didn't imagine that reenactors build that same bond. But yeah, maybe they could.
I'm not saying they build the same bond as actual like
soldiers.
I'm just saying that like it's a social. It is. I've been to a few reenactments myself, not Civil War, but I've been to a few. When I was in college, one of my best friends did World War I reenacting, and then he also did some World War II. And I got a chance to go to a couple of reenactments, and like in my experience of them was essentially hanging out with like, you know, the unit that was put together, but in my case it was like the 6 people that actually knew there, hanging out around campfires, drinking beer, and then like shooting guns and like doing some other fun stuff. Like it was very much a social activity.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And a social activity within a certain group of people that care a lot about, you know, authenticity, accuracy, other things like that. But you're not really going to get that online. And while maybe you would be able to like, all right, let's have our unit meet up digitally, which I think some units are doing, I just don't think you're ever going to get more than a handful of people to do it. Like, you're never going to see 2,000 people on each side at the same. Maybe it will happen once a year for some big event, but I don't think you're ever going to get more than what they have right now, because it's not going to appeal to the mainstream, because the mainstream gamer doesn't want to play it like that.
I think your point's taken. Yeah.
Do you think the AI could fulfill?
Well, there's no AI. At least when I was playing, there were no AI soldiers. It's all.
Oh, really?
Humans. It's strictly multiplayer.
Do you think if they could develop like an AI and then populate the non-NPC, put in NPCs to fulfill some of that?
I mean, it's up. The beauty's in the eye of the beholder in that case. It's not really in my interest to go around shooting AI soldiers in a Civil War game with one round every 15 seconds and no campaign and no progression. Like, I don't want to play Call of Duty Civil War.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, wow.
I don't really want to play Call of Duty in the first place, but I definitely don't want to play Call of Duty Civil War.
Call of Duty Civil War. Well, I guess that covers the stuff that I wanted to cover in terms of the Steam sale. So I guess we should just jump right in.
Let me just say one thing. I don't want to belabor the point, but there are a lot of people, probably people listening to this podcast, who will really enjoy this game. So I recommend you check out some videos and see if it's something that you'd be interested in, or check out some reviews, or even just look at the screenshots. But I think from my point of view, my hesitancy is just that it's not the type of game that personally interests me, and that I'm more interested in the command level and less the individual soldier level. But I do think it's really cool, because I think they definitely have spent a lot of time, effort, and love building the battlefield that they built. And one other thing I could see this useful as is if they open up the whole map, is if they would allow people to kind of walk a battlefield. Like if you can't make it to Antietam, if you can't make it to Gettysburg, if you can't make it to wherever, the ability to actually walk the battlefield in these types of situations where you could use it as an educational tool could also be incredibly useful. So I think there's a lot of effort and a lot of value there. It's just not something that I'm particularly interested in.
So, main topic, Steel Division 2. I wanted to get your guys' feedback. I know you guys both played it, and I'm very anxious. I know Eric. we actually did a co-op yesterday, and I know how you feel about it, but I want to have the audience hear about it. So let's start off left to right, and I'm no that.
Digitally, left to right.
Digitally,
maybe he means
left
in
to
the
right.
United States. I'm more left than you.
My bottle of scotch is to my left. I don't know about it.
I'm more west. West to east, maybe.
Okay, let's start west. Eric, what do you think about Steel Division 2?
Yeah, well, I immediately I noticed, because I should say, first of all, my background coming in was I played Wargame. I played Steel Division, the original, the Normandy 44 one, and I was actually not so impressed with it. I mean, for a lot of the people who are on my Discord, or people who the community I hang out with, basically, we all kind of
you keep playing Wargame Red Dragon and not Steel Division.
Exactly. We basically kind of didn't like Steel Division as much as we liked Wargame Red Dragon, and so I was not expecting too much. I don't know how much we're supposed to touch on this, but there's also some touchy feelings about Eugen and the way they've treated their employees. So some people actually boycotted buying this title on those grounds.
What happened there?
I guess that there's just some class action lawsuits or whatever the equivalent is in Europe of them not being paid their proper wages, and it's going to court.
Their developers $30,000, and then their developers strike a year, and then which for a developer job is ludicrous, and then their developers struck, whatever it was,
went on strike. Mm-hmm.
Then supposedly the strike ended and they came back, but then the people who came back got fired by the company in retribution over striking.
That's hearsay, good sir.
This is all hearsay.
It's probably true, but
French court,
it's in court.
So anyway, let's just say that there are a lot of people who believe that the company Eugen has not done right by their employees. And there's some questions that I've seen aired out there from people on, do I want to support a developer with these somewhat, at least the accusations of shady workplace treatment or whatever you call it?
Yeah, exactly that. So there was a few people who boycotted the game, even people who played the original Steel Division with me. So going into it, I had a lot of potential negatives. The fact that I didn't like Steel Division as much as I like Wargame, and I was actually extremely impressed by the game. I think that there's some, I'm just going to call them intangibles until I can actually put a finger on it. But the distant armor combat, it feels more real. I mean, I don't know if it's a graphic update or an extending of the line of sight, or I think it is an extending of the line of sight and the firing range. You just feel like these tanks are duking it out over a large distance, and you see the shells deflecting, and I don't know, it just feels so much better than the original Steel Division, and I was not expecting that at all. And I came out of all my play sessions, including, some really fun ones with Sean last night, or we basically or was it Friday? I can't remember. Doesn't matter. I came out very impressed by the game, and I can actually give it a recommendation. So that surprised me, and I'm happy to say that I would recommend it to others.
How many out of stars?
Oh, man. Well, give me a second to think about that. I'd give it, 1 out of 1 stars. Not 0. So I recommend it.
Now, I will take a slightly different tact. Not that I didn't like it, because so far I've enjoyed my time with it. But I think you've been talking a lot about the multiplayer aspect, and I think that's the direction that a lot of people who play Eugen games tend to take, is they're principally multiplayer games. And I think that dates back to probably at least to the first Wargame version of the game. So Eugen Systems, from a history perspective, the first game they released in this sort of series was Ruse, which was a World War II RTS-type game that was based off Deception. It was published by Ubisoft. It was available on all the major consoles and PC. And a lot of people had some interesting thoughts about it, but it was principally a single-player game. They carried that over into the Wargame series, which became very much a multiplayer-centric, almost like an esport-type game. Very competitive multiplayer games. You build your decks, you build your divisions to create sort of your ideal formation that you want to bring with you. Thousands of units to choose from, multiple nationalities, all of that. But it was focused on the Cold War through the Wargame games. And then Steel Division 1 which came out, was focused on Normandy, but was still seemingly felt more multiplayer-centric. Like the campaign, they had a couple of missions. I think it was 3 or 4 campaigns originally with like 3 or 4 missions each, highly scripted. And I like you, Tortuga, or Eric, sorry, I know of you as Tortuga, and I know in the podcast we're referring to everybody by their first name, but I, like you, felt like Steel Division 1 was really lacking. I think maybe I went into it with the wrong assumptions because, again, I'm more of a single-player player. I play online sometimes. Like, occasionally I'll jump in a game with the folks over on Tortuga's Discord, which is a great time. But in general, for me, the real benchmark of a game is how good is it at single-player. And maybe that's unfair for the Eugen games because they're so heavily slanted toward multiplayer, but at the end of the day, that's just what I'm looking for, and so that's kind of how I have to rate a game. And Steel Division 1 was really a letdown in that sense because they really, again, a couple of crafted scenarios about some different scenarios in Normandy. The multiplayer was okay, I guess, but whatever. Like the high-tech Cold War gone hot is a little bit more interesting to me, and if I'm going to just be playing multiplayer, I'd probably rather be rolling around with Abrams and Apaches and guided weapons rather than dumb weapons. But I will say my initial impressions of Steel Division 2 have been very positive, and it's been because of some of the new features they've added with the single player. So single or multiplayer is still sort of where I think a lot of people's focus is, but I've been playing the Army General mode, which is a mode that lets you play, I think, one of 4 different campaigns or operations within Operation Bagration. So Steel Division 1 takes place in the Normandy campaign. Steel Division 2 takes place in the Russian theater just after Normandy. It's actually late June of 1944, and the Russians launch an offensive called Operation Bagration, which was one of the... It wasn't a turning point because the Russians were already winning in the theater, but it basically they ripped the heart out of the Wehrmacht in this campaign. They completely destroyed Army Group Center, ripped the German front open, and advanced into the borders of pre-war Poland. So this was the campaign that really irrevocably broke the Wehrmacht to a point where they weren't going to make it to 46. 45 was the last year that they had in them. And it was because they destroyed an entire army group. And this game focuses on Operation Bagration, and they have a mode in the single player called Army General Mode, which basically allows you to take one of 4 different sort of sub-operations of Operation Bagration and allows you to basically move units around on an operational map. And then when 2 units meet, you fight a tactical battle in the same sense like if you're playing online, you'll fight tactical battles. Well, this allows you to move units on an operational map and then fight tactical battles. And it requires you to make some important decisions about which units you're going to commit to a given tactical battle, how you're going to move across an operational map, and things, like destroying enemy units do have carryover effects because you only have the units that historically were available to the Soviets or to the Germans in a given operation, and if those units suffer heavy losses, those losses carry over. So you have historical units, roughly historical orders of battle, and you fight battles out, and as you lose tanks, as you lose men, as you lose units, those units carry over, and the operation will continue throughout the whole Army General mode. Army General is not perfect. I think it actually suffers from some of the things that Rule the Waves suffers from, where it seems like later in campaigns you have a lot of infantry-only battles that get a little bit grindy in the same way that you have a lot of cruiser-only battles that get a little bit grindy in Rule the Waves. But I think it is a tremendous improvement on the single player that adds a ton of replayability and, frankly, a ton of interest. I have no real interest in playing 2 or 3 linked scenarios with a little bit of history behind them, but I do think if you give me an operational map and you let me fight it out almost like a Total War campaign, I think that's pretty interesting, and so far I've really enjoyed that with Steel Division 2.
I'm kind of curious, coming from the perspective of a noob, because this is my first time playing Steel Division 2. I didn't play Steel Division 1. I think I played Ruse for all of 5 minutes. So I'm kind of curious how, so in terms of the tutorial, one thing that I really did like is I picked up the game within 15, 20 minutes. So I felt it was kind of intuitive, but I'm kind of curious, did you guys feel like a need for a tutorial, or did you feel like that your learning curve was good enough to just pick up and go?
Well, I think having played the original Steel Division and playing war games, things are pretty intuitive. You have to come from that background to have that same mentality. I mean, basically, I'm coming from the background of playing enough of these Eugen games that it was pretty familiar. And I think that Matt is the same way. So did you not play the original Steel Division, Sean?
No, I never I never picked it up. I don't know why. I was very not intimidated, but I remember when Ruse came out, and I really loved the concept where I remember seeing the gameplay trailers where like you're kind of like a general and you're moving stuff on the battlefield. I think this was like the 2000s. It was so, I would say, impactful. And when the game came out, I played it for a little bit, but I never caught on to it. Never kind of like, I never kind of embraced it. And Steel Division 2 came out, and I wanted to give it a go because a lot of people had good things to say about the original. So I decided to pick it up. I gave it a go, and I was kind of surprised. This game has really kind of impressed me. I didn't expect it to, kind of like, from what you guys were mentioning, like it was kind of a surprise. Mainly because, well, I like the intuitive gameplay. It only took me about 15, 20 minutes to pick it up. The one thing that I really loved about it, it kind of reminded me a lot about Combat Mission. So when I was playing it, it was just like Combat Mission, but less intense than Combat Mission. You don't have to go into too much detail. I felt like it was a nice bridge between Combat Mission and, I would say, Age of Empires. But yeah, I felt like it was a nice mix between those. A couple other things that I did like. Combat animations, I love the effects. One thing I was pointing out to you, Eric, yesterday was my motors were shelling the crap out of a German squad. And as I was kind of like zooming in to enjoy their peril, I noticed the mortars landing around them and the trees kind of falling over where the mortars hit. I thought that was pretty cool. What'd you guys think about that?
I was going to say, I think the graphics in this game are very impressive. It's interesting, though, that you mentioned Combat Mission, because I found myself, after playing this a little bit, wanting to go and check out Combat Mission Red Thunder, which I never really played, but it came out in 2014, and it was specifically one of the newer combat missions that focused on Operation Bagration as well. So I think it would be interesting to do a comparison between Combat Mission Red Thunder and Steel Division 2. Obviously, there's some time between the two from like a graphics perspective, but I think it's interesting that you say it's a less intense version of Combat Mission. I hear where you're coming from, and I think I agree with you. It's a little bit more, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, it's a little bit more of a casual game than Combat Mission, perhaps. But from a intensity perspective, I very much feel like the Steel Division games are far more intensive than Combat Mission, because at times, like, the graphics on Steel Division are pretty darn good, and I wish I could spend more of my time down at the ground level looking at them. But I find things occurring so quickly, and if I don't keep my tabs on everything across a pretty big map, I will lose control of the battle very quickly. And so the combat in Steel Division feels a little bit clickfesty at times, whereas I think the Combat Mission games tend to have a little bit more of a slow pace because they're a little bit more tactical in their approach. Yes, tactics matter in Steel Division, but it's not quite to the same level of, like, I'm going to make sure this infantry squad uses this, this ridge to cover their flank as they move around. Like, the topographical impacts, I think, are a little bit muted in Steel Division. And I think that the pace of Steel Division is a little bit more rapid and a little bit more clickfesty because all the battles take place in 30 minutes, whereas in Combat Mission, a battle could take much longer.
I think I can pretty much agree with everything Matt said there. First of all, the graphics are beautiful, and exactly what Matt said. It's only unfortunate that the game doesn't allow you to ever look at them because you're so concerned about, everything that's going on, and it can be a little overwhelming. That's actually one of the reasons why I usually play, like against the AI with some like people like you who play co-op against the AI. And I like to do it on easy mode, which means that you probably are guaranteed to win, but it actually gives me a chance to like look at my units and kind of stop and smell the roses. I've seen like the good people when they're playing, it's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of like StarCraft. If you ever watch like a professional StarCraft player, it's a little bit like what I've seen from the people who are good playing Steel Division at least the original. They're just clicking all over the map, and they have no idea what the graphics could probably be. Maybe even are set to the lowest settings to minimize the the draw time.
For all they care, the graphics could be like ruled away.
Well, let's have some standards here.
From a player's point of view, they're not looking at the visuals.
Yeah.
They're just looking at this icon needs to go here. This icon needs to.
Yeah,
go
it might as well be
here,
just a
there.
top-down map. Yeah,
Exactly.
So this is one of the actual drawbacks about the pacing is it doesn't really allow you to look at a unit. Maybe every now and then I just got too tired of doing it, and that's why I play against an easy AI. Is I just Q is the hunt button. It's kind of like the attack option. I just sometimes Q click forward, and then I just watch. I can't be bothered to micromanage all the individual units. I'd much rather watch the movie. So that's. I think that basically everything Matt. I'm repeating whatever Matt said.
Well, I mean, I just had this comment on my YouTube channel a couple hours ago from Battling Geezer. It says it would be nice to view the game at ground level a lot more, but it moves so fast that you can't.
Yeah. Is that something that they should change? I don't know. I mean, then you're gonna. I think it speaks to the fact that they're trying to make this kind of an esport. They made it so that it has that side to it where you're supposed to be micromanaging everything. Whereas a game that doesn't need to be an esport, if they were more comfortable with just letting people play and enjoying it, the pacing would be a little bit differently. Would be a little different. It might be a little bit more like close combat, maybe, or because in close combat things move a little bit slower, and you can actually watch units fight.
Yeah, I mean, combat mission I think is a little bit different of a scale. I think the campaign is not up to muster with the Army General mode. And the idea of moving things across an operational map, at least the latest I've played, really doesn't exist there. But yes, the tactical battles.
I was referring to not to combat missions, but to close combat, like Gateway.
Oh.
Do you remember like the old? It's been like a whole series.
Yeah, no, I mean I'm familiar with it. I've played it.
Yeah, that one has more tactical stuff, and the pacing is a lot slower than Steel Division. It's more tactical than it's slightly smaller in scope. But you're able to look at battles, and you might need to micromanage troops a little bit, but it's more, I don't know, the pacing's slower. I'm just repeating myself. So something more like that might be nice if there's like a toggle that you could choose. But the toggle for me right now is just to choose an easy AI. I know I'll win, and then I just suffer the fact that my units are being terribly inefficient. I do think they actually have pretty good for the height stuff. I think they do it pretty well. Even the new vision mode shows you where your units can't view. And if you're on top of the hill, you cannot view the coming up the hill. Basically, the defilade. You don't have vision there, which is pretty cool. I think they're doing good.
And I didn't mean that that the topographical is non-existent. I think there's very much more attention to that in combat mission.
Okay, that's probably true.
Because combat mission is more concerned, like, can the 6-man group that I have selected sneak around this corner and ambush this? The scale, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. The scale of combat mission is slightly less than the scale of Steel Division. Steel Division's concerned with dozens upon dozens upon dozens of tanks and theoretically, anyway, divisions or brigades and regiments. And I think the largest that really combat mission attempts to do is a battalion level engagement or an enhanced battalion. But you're never really getting brigades on the field all at once.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys, because I felt like this was probably like the only, well, I had two cons from this game. So the first one, I don't know if this bothered you, it kind of bothered me. I had a hard time finding which kind of commands on the keyboard or the mouse to rotate the camera. Normally I would right click on the mouse and move the camera around, because a lot of games do that. If you right click, you just move the camera around to the Q and E keys to kind of move the camera around. I wasn't able to figure that out.
Scroll wheel.
Oh, was a scroll wheel? Well, I mean, like, in terms of, like, the different angles. So, like, instead of looking forward, kind of looking at, if I'm the Russians, right?
And hold the scroll wheel down, it basically lets you pivot on a 3D axis.
Yeah, it's the third mouse button.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. All right, so I'm going to have to try that out.
People might not know what the scroll wheel is.
Well, no, I was actually boot camped into, and I have a Logitech mouse that I use for my gaming, which is the I got it on sale for Best Buy. It's like $20. It's normally like a $70 Logitech, but it's actually a really good mouse. So I'm gonna have to try that out with this one. The other thing I wanted to kind of touch on is, do you guys feel that units die too easily? Because I notice when I come out with a shit ton of tanks, right? I'll come out with like 8 or 9 tanks, and they go to bed, right? Like they literally come up the hill, and within probably like a minute, I'll lose like a quarter of the tanks, and I'm like, all right. And then probably within a few more minutes, I'll pretty much lose 3/4 of them. And I noticed that like 1 or 2 hits, those tanks are gone. And these are T-34s. These are like full bore T-34s. And I was kind of surprised that, I don't know if that's historically accurate. Like tanks when, were kind of like, 1, 2, 3, they were gone. Or are they supposed to last a little bit longer in combat? But I felt like, as soon as I put them on the battlefield.
Probably depends what's shooting at them, right?
Well, I had infantry shooting at them, a couple of German tanks, like 2 of them. But I was just like, literally, if I'm rolling up
tanks, were they Panzer IVs, or were they Tigers or Panthers? I mean, if a T-34 gets hit on with an 88 millimeter gun, it's going to die probably. There's a chance its frontal armor will deflect it because it is sloped armor. But in general, a T-34 is going to die with an 88 millimeter shooting at it.
I think that Eugen has done some pretty good research, and I kind of trust that they've done a pretty good job modeling the slanted armor and all that, the penetrations and stuff.
No, I agree. I think they've bought a bit of goodwill from me as well, because I think there's this tendency for people to worship the Tiger or other German tanks and basically treat them as infallible. And that's not borne out by the historical record, by the way. But I think they do a pretty good job of it. Like I think one of the interesting things with this game and the operation occurring when it did is, I didn't realize this, but I was doing some reading on Operation Bagration, and right around this time, the Sherman starts becoming ubiquitous in some Soviet units, the American Sherman, because it's arriving in Lend-Lease. And I thought it was also interesting that the Russians actually had a pretty high opinion of the Sherman tank as a reliable tank with a decent gun, and they especially like the 76 millimeter version. And you always hear the stereotype of the Sherman being unable to hit the Tiger or hurt the Tiger, which is a bit of a stereotype. Certainly for the 76 millimeter, that's not true at all. But I think if you actually look at the combat results, in my opinion, when I'm shooting at a Tiger head on with a 75 millimeter Sherman, and the shells just keep getting that report bounce, 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 and you see the shell ricochet off. So like you can definitely see times where tanks are taking a beating. On the other hand, in the game I just played, yes, I was hitting the Sherman or the Tiger from head on, and the Tiger was just obliterating the Shermans straight ahead of it. But I had a Sherman on its flank right into the side armor. Thing went up like a Ronson. And I think it to me it seems like they did their homework. Are the ballistics as detailed as combat mission? Probably not. But for this game, I think they did a really good job, and I also think they did a good job of not buying into some of the stereotypes about the equipment involved, because a lot of the literature that sprung up immediately after the war was not super accurate in how the actual weapons performed. And as history's gone on and some of those accounts have been taken into consideration, things have become a little bit more clear. And I think you'll see a lot of stuff online about the Sherman Tiger myth. And I think it's interesting because you see both sides of it. You see T-34s in action. You see Shermans in action. I think the Soviet front is a really interesting theater to examine, because while there's a lot of fanboys that'll complain out there that the German Uber equipment isn't good enough, I really do feel like that's a reflection of the fact that they do a good job of actually understanding the history behind it and not the myth behind it.
And to answer the question about like how many hits can a tank take, it really just depends on if it's a penetration or not. If it's a penetration, it probably kills the crew no matter what. I mean, the percussion alone, regardless of the shrapnel, is going to knock crew out, or if a lot of crews would bail even if they were still alive. So you essentially would knock the tank out with even one penetration. So the way the tank would survive is if it wasn't a penetrating hit, which is why you have the sloped armor or the thick armor. So
yeah, sorry, I didn't answer your question. Before I went on my mini rant.
You answered it.
No, but I mean, you're right, because I will say also, I've seen numerous times where my shots keep bouncing off the enemy armor, so I do trust that it's not just a one or two hit, but to your point, like, a lot of it comes down to tactics. If I hit a tank from the side, I'm going to probably kill it. If I hit it head on, it's a bit more dicey.
So rounding out this review, if you guys had to kind of like give a thumbs up, thumbs down for people to buy this game, immediately, what do you guys would say?
Okay, I'll upgrade my 1 star out of 1 star to 2 stars out of 2 stars. I think it's not even middle of the road. I would say it's a recommend. The graphics are good. I haven't played the single player stuff, which is weird because I am also definitely one of those people who prefers the single player aspect. And honestly, that's kind of...
Unless you're on his Discord, he will play with you if you are on his Discord.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, that's kind of how I view the co-op versus AI. It's basically like I'm playing a campaign, a single-player campaign in co-op mode. So,
can I say that I really enjoy that element of the game, too? Because I don't think I'd ever played co-op against an AI, with the exception of Call of Duty Modern Warfare with a friend where we were playing like zombies together against. But like, I think they do a really interesting job of allowing you to play on the same team as your own, like as your friends, and play strictly against an AI, so it's not super competitive. It's an enjoyable little bit of a social event, and especially like when I play with people on your Discord, that's a lot of fun, and I never really did that before, and it's enjoyable when it's not competitive against other humans, and you're just kind of having a relaxing afternoon and playing some World War II tanks and pushing them around a map and watching stuff blow up.
Yeah, I love the game. It was great. It's a great game. The two things that I wanted to kind of also mention that I really love is the incredible sound effects. I really love the fact that when you zoom in on the tank, you could hear the engine, going, and then when you zoom out, it kind of like it becomes more and more distant.
Yeah, I want to just comment on that. Everything with the graphics, with the audio, has a really fine attention to detail. So it's a very polished game from that aspect. I haven't seen anything which, shook me out of any kind of immersion. It's a really nice touch. And that's why I think...
Just when those, when the Martians showed up, that was a little bit weird.
Yeah, well, yeah. When...
Is that happening in the game, really?
Didn't even have a follow-up for that. Yeah, of course, it was the Martians. No, I don't think that ever actually happened.
Yeah, I broke through as the Soviets, and all of a sudden these Martian Nazis showed up. Apparently they were sent by the Nazis on the other end of the moon.
What were we talking about in the Heartsfire 4 podcast?
Yeah, we were talking about that. I thought it was an Easter egg. That's why I was like, wait, did you find an Easter egg? And like, I would literally
all you have to do to defeat them, by the way, is just make sure that you recruit a couple of the old opera music battalions, and they'll go around playing their music, and then the heads will explode on the aliens.
Or that, or you could use attack dolphins, the trained attack dolphins, which I think was another
dolphins with lasers. So both of you guys loved it. I loved it. I thought it's an incredible game.
Hey, do you, Matt? Do you love it?
I never said love. Don't.
Yeah. What's your rating? Give us some numbers.
I have enjoyed it. If I had to rate it, I would probably put it at 7.5 to 8 out of 10. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think the single player, honestly, I need to get a little bit deeper into it to see how it evolves. I hope that they do what they did with Steel Division 1, where they added a bunch of additional single player like tactical battles or campaigns. I think the one thing that I was kind of longing for, I understand why they didn't do it. Operation Bagration was one of the largest offensives ever undertaken in history, but I kind of wish there was an Army General mode that did the whole operation rather than just focusing on individual parts of the campaign. But in some sense, I feel like Steel Division 2 gave me something that Combat Mission never did, and it was that the way they handle the campaigns, the way they have a division that carries over battle after battle after battle. Like, Combat Mission never achieved, I think, what Steel Division 2 has achieved at the operational level. And that is tremendously encouraging. I honestly wish I could take the operational aspect of Steel Division and overlay it with the tactical aspect of Combat Mission, and that would be the perfect war game ever. But that being said, I do think the tactical combat and Steel Division 2 does come close, and I'm really enjoying my time with it. I haven't had enough time into yet to say like, oh, it's the greatest war game ever or whatever. I think it's a game I'm enjoying my time with. It's a game that I think I'll come back to and play multiplayer with. And I think it's a game that is really interesting and well done. And I think the question remains, how well do they do patching their bugs? How well do they do keeping this game alive? And, what's the long tail on this game? Because my initial impression is great, but, I think with any of these kind of games, it takes a little bit of time to get comfortable with.
The only person I would like to hear a little bit more on before we finish up is Sean. I don't think you've had enough chance to really say, like, what's your opinion?
Before Jean talks, let me jump in here and
please, you have the floor.
Honestly, those are the main things I wanted to cover. I really love the sound effects, the combat animations. I really love that, especially when you see the mortars or artillery just go off, and just the amount of blasting that was going on in the battlefield. I really love the fact that when my artillery is going and smacking all across the woods and stuff like that, where the Germans were kind of hunkered down, like literally the forest got ripped apart, and it basically stayed throughout the rest of the battlefield. Like new trees didn't spawn, and it became like a cratered battlefield. And I really like that, because some games just basically respawn all the trees, so it kind of takes away from that immersion. So this game did a really awesome job with that.
Yeah, did you notice, for example, that if you shell a town, you can actually deplete the cover of the buildings? You can actually blow up the buildings, and they can't be used as cover anymore.
To be fair, Combat Mission has been doing that for like 15 years. Except then you can use the building debris as cover.
Yeah, I think there's still some small amount of cover, but
yeah, I need to get back into Combat Mission. I know they've been really adding more and more releases. I just haven't. I guess because they're not on Steam.
Well, and you got to pay for patches.
Oh, you got to pay for patches? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, they're weird. They're weird.
No way.
Yeah. Battlefront.
Patches or DLC?
It's a little outdated.
I will say, though, that I think the best war game ever made... Well, I should pull that back a lot.
Wow.
You fell into his own hole there. I'm the one that's supposed to be saying that.
One of the best war games ever made, to this day, is Combat Mission Barbarossa to Berlin, which was the second game in the Combat Mission series. But it took it from the Normandy campaign, which is the first game, into the Soviet campaign. And that was a truly special game, at least for me in my gaming history. I remember that was a special game.
I feel like,
and that's probably a topic for another episode of just putting that out there.
That's high praise.
Yeah, we have to talk about that one. We got to compare that with Command Ops 2 even.
So I've never played Command Ops, and I mean,
it's a very niche title. Not a lot of people have, but it's a little bit higher scale, more maybe a little bit closer to operational level, but it's very, very good. So,
well, we know what you guys will be playing over the next week.
No, only Rule the Waves and IL-2.
Is Command Ops on sale right now? Isn't Command Ops 2 on Steam? Is that on sale right now?
No, I don't think so. In fact, the funny thing is, we'll talk about them another time. They're very backwards in their mentality. I don't think that they're forward looking at all. They don't believe in promoting their content or doing Steam or any of that. I think that's Lock and Load Publishing. So it's the person from Matrix Games from like 10 years ago before he left.
Holy shit! Command Ops 2 Commander Pack, $164.93 on Steam.
Yeah, you're not joking, man. And I wanted to try to. Oh yeah, they did put it on Steam. Yeah, that was a recent
25% off now, so get it for a tremendous deal.
Well, 25% off of like $200 is quite a lot. So, but hey, come on, TSG. Let's be honest. That's only about 30 cups of coffee. So,
well, they have. Well, here's the thing. I will say, and I've heard this from the folks on 3 Moves Ahead, because they actually did a Command Ops episode as well. Command Ops is very much like a. I don't know how you call it, but it's like individual chunks, right? Like chunks of DLC that cover different operations. It's a modular game in a certain sense. Mm-hmm. And so like they've got Command Ops. I mean, that's all of the Command Ops for $164. They've got West Wall Volume 7 for $30, Knock on All Doors, whatever that is, for $30, the Cauldron, which is $35. So like they've got all these different operations that are like $25, $30, which are basically like individual games. You can download the base module for free on
Exactly.
Steam.
That's what I wanted to say. You can actually just test it out, the demo. It's even that is I mean, it's a difficult game to get into. It's pretty complicated, but I don't want to like steer the conversation down. We should probably do a whole episode on stuff like combat mission compared with command ops compared with close combat. Those are three pretty comparable titles. So,
well, next episode. Before we close out this episode, I wanted to ask you guys, what are you drinking?
It's a Sunday night. I'm not drinking anything. I got to work tomorrow.
I gotta get up really early. I'm drinking a glass of milk. That's right.
Okay.
I thought I'd say that because that is going to be pretty strange. I don't think people drink milk when they're, not 5 years old anymore, but I do. So
I still drink milk. Milk and cookies are delicious, man.
Yeah, I had milk and goobers.
My uncle drinks buttermilk, but that's pretty nasty.
What are goobers?
Goobers, those are the peanuts covered with chocolate.
Oh, those are good.
Peanuts covered with chocolate are called goobers?
I mean, this is a name brand version. Yes, I'm pretty sure you can buy peanuts covered with chocolate called different things, but
I mean, it sounds delicious.
I
will say, by the way,
movie
my
snack
wife
pack
thinks that I'm bizarre that I still occasionally drink milk or drink milk with cereal.
Yeah, mine too. That's why I said it expecting full well to get some flack for it.
I was like, this is normal, and she's like, no, you're crazy. Milk is for like babies, and it's like, well,
milk does the body good.
There's at least two of us.
Yeah, I guess. So it's a manly thing. I have not been drinking tonight, but I do have a bottle next to me of Banknote, which is a blended Scotch whiskey. It's aged 5 years, and it's inoffensive, pretty generic, relatively cheap. Nothing special about it. It is imported by Pacific Edge.
What about you, Jean? What's your poison?
I was drinking El Guapo, which is my normal favorite. You guys probably already researched.
Yeah, IPA, right?
I'm going to rename this podcast the El Guapo Podcast.
But the weird thing about that, so I was at Olive Garden. I was
here comes the New York accent.
Which word it came out with the? I know that happens a lot, especially when I like.
It did. It definitely came out.
I thought that was intentional for sure.
I thought so too.
No, I don't even know. I know that people say with coffee or hot dog, or I think those are the two main words. But I was at Olive Garden, and the woman came up to me. She's like, "What are you drinking?" I was like, "Can I get a Guapo?" And she was like, "Oh, I don't know what that is. Like, we don't have it." I'm like, "Okay."
Italian place. Italian place.
So I respond back to her. I said, "Okay, I'll just have any IPA you guys have on tap." And they were like, "Is that like a new thing?" And I'm like, "No, IPA, like any type of IPA you guys have." It's just like, is that a special type of beer? Like, is that the new kind of hip thing? And I'm like, no, wow. It's been around for a while. And she, she's not an older person. She was like in her like early 20s, had a wedding band on her. So it's not like she came straight out of high school, So I'm kind of like, what the heck's going on? And so, just go back to the bar and ask the bartender. She kind of gave me this like dirty look, like I didn't know what I was talking about. So she goes all the way back to the bar. She comes back. She's like, apparently we do have an IPA, and it is actually called a Guapo. I was like, yep, figured.
That's
Let me just say before you disparage the fine people of Olive Garden. Last fall, my wife and I were up in Rochester, Minnesota. So not exactly, Metropolis Center, and we went to an Olive Garden there, and the waitress recommended several local craft beers. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, that person obviously didn't know. I also have an alcohol next to me that I'm not drinking.
That's what he says, folks. That's what he said.
Kroger. It's Kroger.
Oh god.
Hydrogen peroxide topical solution.
You're going to say the Kroger vodka, which, by the way, the people who used to live like 2 units above us absolutely loved. They had like a 175 in their freezer all the time, and every time we came up, they were like, we're going to make, sparkling water with vodka. And it was like, okay,
guys.
Gosh.
No.
Just in case there's any legal attachment to this, I have to, specifically say, do not drink hydrogen peroxide.
Yes, please do not drink hydrogen peroxide.
I don't know. I am. If it's not obvious, or maybe Darwin, maybe you should. I don't know.
Guys, why did our viewership drop by 50% after the last episode? What happened?
They'll died. But it's very good at cleaning cuts, which is what it was being used for.
Hell yeah. Clean those cuts.
I'm sorry. You guys brought me on. You didn't have to.
I mean, I'm all about drinking hydrogen peroxide, but no, really, don't do that.
I didn't recommend it.
Well, I think that's a natural conclusion to this episode. What are you, Sean? You already said what you're drinking, so yeah. This episode not officially sponsored by either hydrogen peroxide, Banknote, or El Guapo.
But we should probably go do a 3-way game of Steel Division co-op. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. That sounds good.
You said that in a really weird way, Sean.
Well, I thought his three-way kind of thing was sounding a little... I'm glad he continued after three-way.
This isn't going to make it into the podcast, is it? This is all getting edited out.
Just the part of Sean going, the very first part, the intro of the podcast should be Sean saying, "Ooh, I like that.
I like that. I like that a lot."
And welcome to episode 30 whatever of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast.
Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying, thanks for watching, and I'm out.
Bye, guys. Auf Wiedersehen. Good night.